Today I am going to be setting up a tank just for these beautiful fish. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I'm setting up a tank just for one of my favorite fish ever, and it's going to be in that tank right there. So this tank right now is a 60 centimeter aquarium. It's 60 centimeters by 45 by 45 centimeters. It is much bigger than the tank that they're currently in, and right now they've got this tank all to themselves, but you can see it's kind of like a mess. There's Anubias in here, there's Vallisneria, and it's not really planned. I want to make a beautiful planted tank just for them in this tank right here. And currently this tank is holding water. I've been leak testing it to see whether it would hold, because I did a reseal. I resealed the silicone on this tank, and so far it's doing really great. Let me turn the light on this tank so that we can see better, but you can see, yeah, it's doing all right. So what I'm going to do right now first is I'm going to take all this water out and pour it down into the tank below to leak test that tank, because that tank I also did a reseal on. So yeah, we're gonna save water that way and it will be all good. Alright, so you've got the tank mostly drained. There's still a little bit of water in there, but that's not really a big deal. Now we're going to get the gravel in, and I'm going to go with the gravel substrate for this tank. Actually, for all of these tanks, I'm actually going to go with a thick layer of gravel. I think it's kind of like my new style now. I kind of like the thick gravel and just with lots of plants, not much hardscape at all. I'm not so sure why. I think it's just the ease of maintenance. You don't have to worry about bumping into hardscape materials when you do maintenance, but for this tank actually we're going to put hardscape, but only a very little bit. We're going to be using some of these rocks that I picked up at my local, I'm not actually so sure what it is. It's like a rock yard or a scrap yard, and they just had lots of rocks. Let me show you guys a little bit of that. So you can see there were a bunch of rocks there, really nice, and the owner of that place is really friendly. He gave me some of these rocks for free. And he's also given me some other rocks like these ones in the past for my African cichlid tank that we'll be setting up. And yeah, I think that store is more like a gardening store, but they do projects for customers at home. So like they make their garden all nice and clean and stuff like that, but that's probably just their stockyard where they keep all the rocks and stuff. So we'll be using some of that in this tank, and I'll also be adding some driftwood. But first, as I mentioned, we gotta put the gravel in, and we've got this gravel right here, and I don't have enough of it, so I'm gonna go to the store right now and pick up some more of this gravel that I really like. Alright, so the first store I visited is this place called Remix, super nice store, and I picked up this canister filter, the 𝗯𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘀 Professional 4 Plus, and it's not for today's build, but it will be for my African cichlids. And yeah, this thing is secondhand, but it's in super good shape, and I got it at such a great price, so I couldn't resist it. And I also got some aquatic plants from here that I'll show you guys later. Alright, so I just bought more stuff from this store called 𝗯𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘀𝗀. You can't, there is really like, oh, here's the sign, the store, but yeah, maybe if I can, I'll try to get a tour of this place. It's a pretty nice store, so I'll show you guys what I got once we get back home. Alright, so I bought a couple bags of the gravel that I really like. It's the same exact one that's in this tank as well. You can kind of see fine gravel, and it works really, really well with the plants. And then I also got this filter, the 𝗯𝘂𝘀𝘀𝗀 Professional 4 Plus, as I mentioned, and this will be for this tank right here, the African cichlid tank. It's gonna be way more than enough. If I want more flow in the tank, I'm going to add another filter, a smaller filter, canister filter to this, but for now I think this will be just fine. And yeah, I also got some accessories for the filter because this was used. It didn't come with the part. It came with all the trays inside, but no media and no filter pipes and hoses, so I had to get that separately. So we got that. And then what else did I get? I can't remember. So yeah, oh yeah, I did get some plants as well. I got this right here. A few stems of Blixa Japonica, which you guys will see me add into this tank later. So I'm gonna go ahead right now and clean up some of this gravel, rinse it out well, and then we'll start adding it into this tank. So I've decided to add some styrofoam into the middle section of the tank. This will both work as a support for the rocks that I'll be putting on top of it, and it'll also kind of like protect the bottom and give me some height at the same time. So yeah, I could also use lava rocks, but this is what I have on hand right now, so I'm just going to place this in the middle of the tank. And it's gonna move around because there's still water in here, but we'll put the gravel in and then fix it in place. So I've got most of the gravel in. Now I'm going to start playing around with the rock. I'm only going to use these two rocks. I'm going to add some driftwood later, but for now I'm going to play around with this too and try to kind of make like an island scape. It's kind of tough being that these two rocks are kind of similar in size and shape, but I'll try to see what I can come up with. I really want to give this rock more height, so I'm thinking what I can place underneath it, and I'm not sure. I could place another styrofoam board. I could find a flat piece of rock that can go underneath it. So I've just cut out another smaller piece of styrofoam this time, and hopefully that will slide under real nice, and it'll give me just the right amount of height that I'm looking for. I've got the rocks in there really nice. This one on the right hand side is super stable. It's not gonna go anywhere. But this one is slightly wobbly, but it's not really gonna fall over unless you push it. So that's that. Before we get to planting this tank, I'm going to add some driftwood into this tank. So I'm gonna head up to my driftwood collection pile. So here's my little collection of driftwood. You can see that I really love driftwood by the amount that I have here. But I was playing around the other day for today's project, seeing which driftwood I wanted to use, and I've come up with this little selection as well as these selections over here. This is called red moorwood, also known as roots wood, and when you buy them at fish stores they usually come in a yellowish orangish color, but once you submerge driftwood, you get them soaked underwater, they will all turn kind of the same color. So yeah, this is the other wood that I'm thinking of using. This is called slim wood, and it is, I like the textures more on this because this wood is kind of smooth and doesn't have much like textures. But this wood, you can kind of see all the lines in it, and it looks really nice and realistic. And yeah, I think I'm gonna use this slim wood instead. And while I'm up here, I might as well show you guys my immersed grown aquatic plants collection that's over there. We'll zoom in, it's quite a distance away, but you can see all the plants growing in those little containers. I really got to organize them this year and update you guys on them. I haven't done much with them actually, but you can see those plants that are really green there, they've overwintered, so they survive during the winter outdoors and they're doing quite well. Alright, so I'm gonna play around with some of this driftwood. May take a little bit of time since I kind of am a perfectionist and I want things to look as nice as possible, so I'm gonna skip to once we get this in the tank. Alright, so really simple scape here. Apologies for all the glare that you see in the background. But right here, we've got the wood, kind of like an island style. I know it looks kind of funny right here, but we're gonna put the centerpiece plants in this tank. It's gonna be a Java fern type. I'll show you guys in a moment, but we're going to have it on these two rocks right here, and once they start growing in, it's gonna make everything look a lot more natural. And this tank is going to have very simple plants. So first of all, I mentioned that Java fern that we'll be putting in the middle of the tank. Then in the foreground area, I plan to put Blixa Japonica, as I showed you I bought earlier. I didn't buy that many. I bought 5 stems, and I've got a couple right in here that I can steal from, and it's definitely not going to be enough for this tank, so I might add more in the future, or I'll just wait for them to grow and I'll propagate it myself. And then the final plant that I'll be putting in the background is going to be 𝗲𝗂𝗀𝗀𝘀𝘀 feather duster, and I don't even know if I have any of that still around. I have some. I've got a few of it. I've got to clean it up and sort it out later, but yeah, I might add a few more taller plants in the background, but it's going to be an all green tank, and that's what I'm going to be so excited for this tank. It's going to be complete green. I'm going to start by planting the Blixa Japonica in the foreground area. Alright, so a day has passed since I planted the Blixa Japonica. The reason why I had to wait another day is because I was just preparing the rest of the other plants that I had to put in this tank. So first of all, the other plants that I'm putting in here, as I mentioned, I'm putting in some Java Fern. The fern that I'm putting in is Microsorum Trident, the Trident Fern, and that's one of my favorite Java Ferns. So I want this whole area in the center to be covered in that fern. And the reason why I had to prepare it, it's because it was sitting in this tank. I had 2 giant clumps of that Java Fern, and one half of it was sitting in this area. You can see it's completely dark. The light on this tank only spans half the length of the tank. It's 45 centimeters, where this is a 90 centimeter 3-foot tank. You know, if plants don't get enough light, they're gonna die off slowly. So the Microsorum Trident, it was still alive, but a lot of the leaves were yellowing and there are holes in the leaves, so I had to trim it up. The other half was in this side. It was slightly better, but still it was underneath all these plants up top, so it wasn't getting enough light, and it was also slowly dying off, so I had to do something about it. Same thing with the 𝗲𝗂𝗀𝗀𝘀𝘀 feather duster, which is this plant right here. This plant was actually doing quite well. It was just left floating, but it was just clumped up together, and I had to separate them individually, so now it's much easier to plant these, and we'll be planting this in the background. But as for the Trident Fern, the Trident Fern is currently right in this tank. I've tied them up. You can see there's not many leaves on it. Some of them don't even have any leaves, it's just the rhizome, but soon enough those leaves will emerge as the rhizome isn't dead yet. So yeah, you can see here's a few more. I'm just currently temporarily keeping it in this tank, and then later we'll move it, well actually right now, we'll move it into that tank and place them in that middle area right there. And you can see over here, this is all the trimmings of the Microsorum Trident, all the bad leaves. When your Java Ferns have bad leaves, like yellowing leaves and holes in their leaves, you want to definitely trim them off. You don't want to leave them because they're just going to cause problems in your tank. They're going to foul your water, and they're also going to lead to algae issues. So you want to trim off any bad leaves you see and just keep all the good ones. And even if you make your plants all bold, you cut off all the leaves, it's going to grow back, so nothing to worry about. Okay, so right here I've got a couple rocks of Microsorum Trident, a couple rhizomes of them. I'm going to place them around and on this rock, and yeah, we'll see how it looks in a moment. So let me find some spots for them. So I've got the Java Fern Trident. You can see them looking really nice. I know it doesn't look like much right now, but once it starts growing in, it's going to look amazing. This Java Fern actually came from my IAPLC contest tank, which I'll put a picture up right here. You can see the Java Fern Trident just growing like crazy in that tank. But once I moved it down into that tank without any lights, no CO2, it just slowly started dying off. So right now it's our chance to revive it again, and I can't wait for it to start growing like crazy in this tank. But right here you can see I've placed most of the rocks on top of the main rock. Most of these lava rocks, I've just placed it on top of the main rocks, or just wedged it in the crevices in between the rocks and the driftwood. But for this piece right here, it would keep sliding down because this rock angle is too steep, so I had to glue this one in place, and I'm not sure if you can see the glue marks, but there is some glue marks at the bottom. And the good thing is that it's stuck in place. It's not going anywhere. The bad thing is there's a bit of glue mark there and it doesn't look that good, but once the plants start growing, you won't be able to see that at all. So next up, the final plant we'll be adding into this tank is the 𝗯𝘂𝘀𝗀𝗀 feather duster, which is this beautiful grass-like plant. So I'm going to put that in the background of the tank, and while I'm doing that, I'll probably fill the tank up with water as well. Okay, so while I'm currently filling this tank up, I'm going to set the filter up on this tank. Currently, we don't have any filters on that tank, and at the very beginning, I was planning to run them on sponge filters. As you know, this whole area of the fish room on that side is all being run on sponge filters. But for these two tanks, this top one and this bottom one, I want to run them on this type of filter right here, this overhead, I'm not so sure what you call it, the box filter. I'm going to be taking this off of this tank, and we're going to move it over there, so I'm going to do that right now. And then, since this tank isn't going to have a filter anymore, I'm going to take that 𝗲𝗾𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 canister filter that's sitting right there, and we'll bring it over onto this tank. Okay, so we've got the water filled up, we've got the light on this tank, we've got the filter also on this tank now running really nicely, we've got the CO2, we've got everything going on. Now, before I forget, I've got to move this filter, this canister filter, and bring it over to this tank right here, the Iwagumi tank, because currently it doesn't have a filter. But the thing I'm really happy about now is that I've got the light centered on this tank. Before, this light was sitting on the front of this tank, kind of like that, because I had that box filter sitting on the back half of this tank. So now that I can finally get it in the middle, I'm super happy. All my lights are lined up super nice now, and we can get a really clean look out of this. I'm going to need to cut out a hole right here in this wood so that I can put my filter hoses through, because if I don't do that, I'm going to have to put the filter hose, I'm going to have to bring it from in front of the stand, and it's going to look kind of ugly and get in the way, kind of like this CO2 tubing right here. So we're going to fix that up later as well, and it's going to look really clean. Just hold on and I'll show you guys in a moment. So hopefully this idea of mine goes according to plan. If it doesn't, it's going to look kind of weird, but for the time being. But in the future, I eventually plan to maybe put a 6-foot tank on this rack so it'll cover it up, but let's see how it goes. Oh my gosh. Alright, take a look at that. That is amazing. Perfect opening for our hoses, our filter pipes. But now, I need to sand this down, make it cleaner. It's kind of rough and sharp, so I'm gonna clean this up. And look at that! Perfect! This is so much better in my opinion. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of that. Do you like this, or do you like it when like the hose sticks out? For this I have no option. I don't have a choice but to do it like this. I mean, it's not too bad, but where I can kind of save space and kind of make it look neat, I'll try my best to do so. And you can see it's not the most perfect cut, but I did my best and it's working really, really well. Now in the future, I do hope to change these pipes to clear pipes or glass lily pipes, because I just prefer the look of them much more. Let me know in the comments below as well. Do you like the glass pipe look? Take a look at that. I love this because you can just see through and it looks so much more elegant compared to this. So yeah, and also we need clear hoses. Clear hoses will make this thing look even better. Now, why on earth did I just add a pair of guppies into this tank? This is not meant to be a guppy tank. The reason is, I just want to make sure that the tank runs alright, that the fish will be okay in this tank. So I just got a pair of my guppies. I've got a bunch of them right here so they can act as a testing fish for me. And they're probably going to do alright. The reason why I want to test it is, first of all, I just want to make sure that the silicone doesn't leach anything. I made sure to buy 100% silicone that doesn't have any mold resistant things and stuff, but I just wanna just to be extra safe. And also I've got a cycled filter here. I can put the fish in straight away, but just once again I just wanna make sure that everything runs alright before I put my favorite fish in there. These guys, the Sawbwa resplendens, Asian rummy nose rasboras. And right now, usually they have so much better color, but now since it's summer, it's getting really hot. The water temperature is on the higher side, and these guys like cooler water, so they're not really a cold water fish, but they prefer temperatures in like the 20s to 23 range, maybe even a little bit cooler. But once it gets into like the 25 to 30 degrees Celsius range, it gets a little bit too hot for them, and their colors do fade off a little bit. But you can see they are still really beautiful. They've got that amazing red color face with the red stripes on the tail and that blue, metallic blue bodies. Just one of my absolute favorite fish. So I'm gonna leave this tank as it is for about a week or two. Make sure that the guppies are doing fine. It's a pair of guppies, a male and a female, so I'm definitely going to take them out before they give birth to a bunch of babies, because that will just be a problem to catch every single fish out if they have babies. So I want to prevent that from happening. And to give you an idea of what this tank should look like, my goal of this tank, first of all, the Java Fern, I want it to be covering these two rocks. So most of the rocks should get covered, hopefully, if I grow this plant correctly. And then the Blixa Japonica, this foreground plant, once it starts growing well, it should get more bushy and it should look like this. I decided not to take these two out, but you can see how nice the growth is on this. Like super, super beautiful. And I just love this plant when it grows big like that. So that plant will be covering the entire front section of the tank to the sides of the tank. So this whole area right here will be just that Blixa. It'll just be very nice lush green around the foreground. And then in the background, the 𝗲𝗀𝗀𝘀𝗀𝘀 feather duster, the fine-leaved grass-like plant, those will grow really tall. They'll grow to the surface of the tank, and it should become like a curtain, so a curtain effect. So it's gonna be all green in this tank. We'll have light green, we'll have like regular green, and then the 𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝘀 should be a darker green. So it's gonna be 3 shades of green, and I can't wait for this tank to develop. Now I'm not entirely sure why, but recently I've just been loving an all green tank look. So this is going to be an all green tank. This tank, we've got the Iwagumi tank right here. It's all green. So I really love this tank too. But then we've got this tank. You can see it's the nature style, but it's green with red and like yellowish. This is also beautiful, but we need more green tanks in this room. And guess what? My IAPLC contest tank that I did for this year, the 2022 IAPLC contest, the aquascaping contest, my tank is all green. So compared to last year, it's a big change. And this year, I've used all like grass-like plants, like tape plants. So no stem plants in this year's contest tank. It'll be super exciting to reveal that tank to you guys next month, or the month after? Yeah, very, very soon. It's coming. As always, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to give a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. Can't wait to add those fish in the tank. The Sawbwa resplendens. They're coming maybe next week. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'll see you guys next time.